Born just 4 months after his father went down with the Titanic, Jakey Astor inherited more money at an early age than most could ever dream about making in a lifetime. Hi everyone, Ken here. This is the story of Chetwode and how the Astors lived large during the Great Depression. Hit that subscribe button and let's explore this house. This video is brought to you in part by Victorian Society in America. More on them later. Jakey Astor was born into American aristocracy under extraordinary circumstances. In August 1912, his mother Madeline Astor gave birth to him in New York City, just 4 months after his father, Colonel John Jacob Astor IV, had gone down with the Titanic. This dramatic start made headlines and earned young Jakey the nickname Titanic Baby. Despite the tragedy, baby Jakey entered a world of privilege. His father had been one of America's richest men, and the Astor name was synonymous with wealth from Manhattan to Newport. Jakey's early life was cushioned by the Astor family's resources, but it was not without complications. His father's will left the bulk of an $85 million estate, nearly $3 billion when adjusted for inflation, to Vincent Astor, Jakey's half-brother from the colonel's first marriage, while providing comparatively modest trust for Madeline and the infant Jakey. This meant that from the outset, Jakey was wealthy but not nearly as wealthy as the primary Astor heir. In fact, he would grow up feeling somewhat cheated of what he saw as his rightful legacy. Years later, he bitterly remarked that Vincent had the legal, not the moral right to keep all the money. Nonetheless, Jakey was far from poor. A $3 million trust, over $100 million today, had been set aside for him, which he could control upon reaching adulthood. His upbringing was split between elite city life and Newport's summer colony. After the Titanic disaster, Madeline Astor retreated to the family's Newport mansion, Beechwood, where she raised Jakey amid the social elite of Rhode Island's seaside resort. Newport was a second home to the Astors. Jakey's own great-grandmother, the Mrs. Astor, had presided over Gilded Age society from Beechwood in the late 1800s, so it's fitting that Jakey's path to prominence would later center on this town. He received the finest education, attending St. George's School in Rhode Island and briefly Harvard University, and was groomed to assume his place in high society. By the early 1930s, as he came of age, he began to step out of his half-brother's shadow. At 21, he inherited control of his trust fund and started making moves that announced his arrival among America's young elites. One such move was his high-profile engagement to socialite Eileen Gillespie, a match that generated press buzz but ended abruptly amid drama. Undeterred, Jakey soon found love elsewhere in the same social circle. In 1934, at Newport's historic Trinity Church, he married Ellen Tuck French, affectionately known as Tucky. The wedding was a grand social event, appropriate for a couple whose lifestyle would embody jazz-age glamour. In January of 1934, only months before his wedding, the 21-year-old Astor bought Chetwode, a sprawling Bellevue Avenue mansion, for a reported $150,000. This was during the Great Depression, a time when many Gilded Age cottages could be had at a fraction of their construction cost. Even so, Chetwode was a prize. Securing this estate signaled Jakey's place in the social order. He was an Astor who would continue the tradition of summering in Newport in grand style. With Chetwode as their stage, the Astors enjoyed a life of privilege. They welcomed their first child, William Backhouse Astor III, in 1935, adding another generation to the Astor line. Chetwode was a product of the Gilded Age at its zenith. Long before an Astor owned it, the mansion was commissioned by another wealthy socialite with grand ambitions. In 1903, Mrs. William Storrs Wells of New York had Chetwode built as her summer residence on Newport's famed Bellevue Avenue. To design her dream cottage, she hired renowned architect Horace Trumbauer. The mansion was constructed of brick clad in limestone, which gave it a stately, light-colored facade. Its roofline featured a steep mansard and ornamental chimneys in the French manner, along with a formal symmetry. Before we head inside, a quick word about the sponsor of today's video, Victorian Society in America. Are you captivated by historic architecture? Want to explore, learn, and dive even deeper into the past? With the Victorian Society in America, you'll have the chance to travel to American cities and tour stunning 19th century buildings, pursue learning through internationally acclaimed summer programs in American cities and abroad, including Chicago, Newport, and London to name a few. Additionally, members will enjoy a free subscription to 19th Century, the semi-annual publication packed with articles on art, architecture, preservation awards, and book reviews. Visit the website below in the video description and become part of the Victorian Society in America today. Thank you, Victorian Society in America, for sponsoring this video. Now back to our tour. The interior design of Chetwode had been entrusted to the firm of Allard & Sons of Paris, and at the heart of Chetwode was its towering Great Hall, which served as a grand entry and central gathering space. True to the chateau tradition, the Great Hall rose an impressive 3 stories in height, capped by a ceiling soaring nearly 45 feet overhead. Off the Great Hall, one would find the salon, essentially the formal living room or drawing room. In Chetwode, the salon was a study in French elegance. Allard & Sons' influence ensured that this room featured Louis XV style decor in keeping with high French taste. Imagine walls adorned with carved boiserie panels, painted in pale hues and gilded, accented with Rococo scrollwork and floral motifs. The salon's ambiance was that of an 18th century Parisian drawing room. Such a room would be used for entertaining callers and hosting tea parties or musicales. Chetwode's formal dining room offered a different but equally impressive style, one meant to inspire reverence and appetite in equal measure. In sum, Chetwode was a triumph of design, a palace in miniature that brought French high society flair to Newport. After the heyday of the 1930s, the trajectory of Jakey's life saw its share of downturns and dramas, quite in contrast to the static grandeur of Chetwode's walls. During World War II, Jakey served as a naval officer for a brief period, though he did not see major combat. The war also disrupted the lavish Newport seasons for a time, as travel was curtailed and many socialites focused on war efforts. He divorced his first wife, Ellen Tuck French, in 1943. Soon, Jakey remarried, and then remarried again and again. In total, he walked down the aisle 4 times, each union a society page item in the day. Finally, in 1956, he found lasting companionship with his 4th wife, Sue Sanford. Financially, the mid-century period was challenging for Jakey Astor. Maintaining Newport mansions and Manhattan apartments was no simple matter in the 50s. The grand lifestyle of the 1930s gave way to some belt-tightening. He sold Chetwode in 1948 for a sum reportedly around $70,000, which was less than half of what he had paid for it before the war. Without Chetwode, Jakey became something of a social nomad. He spent more time in New York and eventually in Florida, where the lifestyle was easier for an aging socialite. In 1992, Jakey passed away in Miami Beach at the age of 79. As for Chetwode, the mansion that had been the jewel of Jakey's youth did not long outlive his ownership of it. The post-war years were cruel to Newport's gilded palaces, and Chetwode was no exception. After John Jacob Astor VI sold the estate in 1948, it changed hands several times, each time seemingly stepping down another rung from its once princely status. On the morning of January 29, 1972, a fire broke out in the mansion. It reportedly started as a chimney fire, perhaps in one of those grand fireplaces that had once warmed the Great Hall, and quickly spread through the old timber framework of the house. The roof collapsed and the interiors were largely destroyed. In the aftermath, there was little choice but to demolish what little had survived. Thankfully, several pieces of salvaged millwork and antique paneling were able to be saved, auctioned, and restored before cleanup was complete. Aside from some odds and ends that found new homes, we still have these old photos to remember Jakey Astor's Chetwode. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. What did you think about this estate? Let me know down below in the comments section. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Victorian Society in America for sponsoring this video. Check out their link in the video description to find out how you can get involved today. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time on This House.